Welcome to the Get Your Act Together podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today we have another episode of our agency series. And I am welcoming to the podcast Mary Zargarian of Zargarian Consulting. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hi, Kelly. How are you doing?
I'm good. So happy to have you here. Can you introduce yourself and a little bit about your business?
Yes, I am Mary Zargarian. I am the CEO and agency owner for Zargarian Consulting. And what we do is help individuals, teams, and organizations leverage the systems that they are investing in to the fullest. So that way they can improve communication, collaboration, just overall effectiveness towards what they're trying to achieve.
Awesome. These are things I love. So this should be fun. So first off, why are you an agency? Why did you go that route instead of another, of the millions of other ways you could have gone?
Yes. Actually, when I started my business, I was a solopreneur. I was actually a solopreneur heading into this year. Just doing things, being a great service provider and OBM to my clients. In about February, it's a good thing. I was getting a lot of inquiries and a lot of coaches because that was the niche that we were serving at that time. A lot of coaches coming to us saying, like, we need the help. And being a people pleaser myself, I
Yeah.
couldn't turn people away. I felt horrible. I was like, we can help so many people if I just had the right team. And that was the moment where I realized it's time. It was always part of the conversation. My husband and I are always talking about my vision for this business. It was always a long-term thought I had. And it just organically happened. It felt like overnight this year, which is really great. I love leading a team. I love mentoring and helping others. So having an agency just felt natural.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's the most intentional answer I've ever gotten on when I asked that question, because so many people are like, I don't know, I had too much work. I mean, you said that, but you had that idea that it was going to get there someday.
Yes,
Yeah.
it just got there a lot faster than I thought it did,
Well,
or I thought it
congratulations.
would. And yeah, it's a good thing.
Why did you want to be an agency though? Like, especially since it was more of an intentional decision for you. Like, what about it appealed to you?
When I started my business, actually, oh my goodness, back in 2018, I started it by being a coach and a coach for women. I spent a lot of time in my business was a side business for a while I was in corporate. Spent a lot of time focusing on how I help women truly understand where their power and authority and desires were with what they do professionally and how that married really well with what they wanted to do with their own personal lives. And I love being able to do that now as an agency owner. We're not just doing that for the businesses that we support, but we're doing it for our own internal team and being able to have my team. They're great business owners themselves, but now they get to be entrepreneurs and really thrive in an environment where we're sharing best practices, we're communicating and supporting each other. Now they don't feel like they have to be the only person with all of the answers for our clients. They have a whole support network behind the scenes that we tap into. So I I think leadership, I know a lot of people don't naturally gravitate to that. For me, it feels good to be able to mentor and share experiences and be like, that's a great question. Let's figure that out together.
Yeah, I love that part of it as well. I love helping my team because I have a team of contractors and I love helping them build their businesses as well, like encouraging them, sharing resources, that kind of thing. So yeah, I love that. I think some people that go into agency, they shy away from agency because they are scared of the leadership management part. And you instead are running toward agency because of that
Yes.
part, right?
Because of that part. I love that part. And I really enjoyed that. When I was in corporate, I was a director on the team. I was in training and development. And so I naturally, that was what I did every single day for others. But within my team, I would work cross functionally with about 20 different individuals to get the work done that we were doing. And they weren't direct reports of mine. But I really
Mm.
enjoyed the process of like leading by mentoring, coaching, getting to know who they are and what motivates them and being able to help play that up more. And I feel like we had a different level of respect and trust because I wasn't the direct manager. Now I know that in an agency, we do lead, we do direct work, but it's been really rewarding to see that see that process open up.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think that you probably have a little bit more of an easier time, maybe. I guess I should ask this.
Maybe.
Do you have an easier time giving away that work coming from being a solopreneur and coming to an agency? Is it harder or easier for you, do you think, to let go of the work since you do love that leadership part?
That's a great question. I will share that there have been different stages of this process this year where I have been able to fully like step out and celebrate that.
Mhm.
And where I've inserted myself back in probably more than I should have. So it's
Yeah, I
it's a
know that feeling.
learning. I know it's a learning process, especially as a new agency and a new team.
Mhm.
But that's also because we went through a rebrand this summer. We've shifted our offers a little bit from what we originally started doing at the beginning of the year. So it's a learning process for both of us. And now we're again at the stage where I say, okay, great. Like we've been two in a box for a while on this. I'm going to step back and let you truly shine as the point of contact. I'm here if you need me. Um, so it's an ebb and flow. It's not black or white. Like you can't just say, okay, today I'm stepping out and I get to be out of all of the
Yeah.
client work. Um, so we're just taking it day by day.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how business is, right? Like
Yes.
you can make all the plans of the world and then, life happens, like COVID happens and the whole world blows up or something. Like even just
I
little things
know.
like your kid's sick and your life gets thrown into a whole thing. So yeah, it is day by day, right? It just is like,
It just is. Yes.
yeah. So tell me about what you offer since you've just mentioned like you have changing up your offers because I love talking offers. What do you do? Like what would someone hire you for?
Right now, we're focusing on four main systems as far as like what we're promoting that we can do for people. Um, ClickUp, Asana, Dubsado, and coaching.com, which is one that's a little less familiar in the online space, but it's so great for any individual coach or any coach who's going to be bringing on a team of coaches. So building out their own agency model.
Mm.
It's a system that I implemented early on in my business and just I've fallen in love with it.
I'm literally
So
writing notes right now because I'm like, I don't know that one. I know the others and I don't happen to use those three, but like the coaching.com, I don't know that one. So
yes. And so what we do is we help any individual team or organization, because we do have a number of like nonprofits, so a little bit of a larger client group. We help them with implementation, training, help them design or redesign how they're leveraging their systems. Because I like to say that right now everybody feels a little burned out and crispy, right? We're hearing that a lot.
yes,
Doesn't
yes, I'm
matter
hearing that a
what
lot.
you do. Yeah, we've been there ourselves.
Uh-huh.
And I like to say that we don't necessarily have a workload problem. We might have a workflow problem. And so we really try to dig in with our clients to understand what their processes look like, what systems are they using. And a lot of times I have clients say, oh, well, we don't really have systems. And I was like, no, 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 you do have systems. They might not be software applications or other things, but you're getting work done somehow. So let's talk through what that looks like and how we can help support that a little differently.
Yeah, like
So
you have
we're,
systems,
we
they
do.
might be a mess. But
Yes,
you have a way of doing something, which is what a system really
yes,
is.
yes.
Yeah. So sometimes you're like, no, no, yours are a mess. Let me help you fix them.
And sometimes they're analog. We're
Hmm.
operating our businesses in a digital space, but sometimes the systems can be like I do a checklist every morning and I make sure I go through my checklist. That's fine. Let's talk through that. How is that working for you? What could be improved? And is there a way for us to automate that or delegate that? I say delegate to resources, but you can delegate to a project management tool, to a VA, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I think that there are certain types of people that come off of corporate, especially that are very analog. I am very digital, like teamwork PM or teamwork projects runs my life, but I still have, if you're on the YouTube channel, you can see my book literally every morning. Like I write everything down because it goes into my brain better. But that is really annoying to my assistant, like, because she can't see that. So that has become, even for me, who is very digital, who's built a whole business, it can be very
Yes.
hard to meld things when you have to share with other
Yes.
people, you know?
And I'm the same way. Like we use all of the systems. for ourselves, our clients.
Mhm.
We're in, I don't know how many different workspaces and email inboxes throughout the week. But in order for me to make sense of where is everybody best served with my focus and attention today or this week, I write it all down. Now I've moved to a digital planner. It's still technology, but it's the same act. I'm writing out what are my focus areas? What do I need to do for each client? Where does my team need my support? And I'm writing that out and checking it off through the week.
There's nothing in the world just like taking a pen and making a check mark next to something. Like, there's like it doesn't I can click off the same task in teamwork, and it doesn't have the same effect of like, "Yes, I am done." Like, it doesn't. And for me, I'm much more if I, outside of this screen, there are lots of messes of things because 'cause I'm working on some new things. So there's like a whiteboard or a big, huge sheet of paper as I, map things out, and it's all has to be written first. It's like how my brain thinks. So that could be hard though when you're trying to delegate to a team, especially um, if it's a newer team. So you're coming in and helping people say, okay, let's pull those things out. Let's get these organized. Let's get them into ClickUp, Asana.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a huge help because a lot of people who aren't ops nerds don't know how to do that.
Yes, and it's overwhelming for anyone who doesn't use a system like that. It's overwhelming to think about, oh my gosh, I have to go into a system and it's going to tell me that I have 100 things that need my attention and I need to do. And where do I get started? So we just take it like step by step. We meet our clients where they're at today and we show them, like, you don't have to like take in the whole cake on day one. Like, let's just take a bite, see how that feels, test it out for a while, and then move on from there.
Yeah, that sounds awesome and so needed. All right, so let's get into your agency. How
Yes.
is your team structured? How is your agency structured? Is it contractors as employees? Are there a lot of levels? Are there, only a few levels? How is it working?
Yes. Right now, my whole team, they're all contractors. Everybody is primarily across the US, except I have one team member who's in the Philippines.
Okay.
And they all have a very specific like specialty, whether that's a system or a process. They all have unique backgrounds. So some of them are certified in what they do, and some of them are like, I'm not certified, but I have like years of experience doing what I do. And so, depending on the client need, the project, I pull each of them in that suits their strengths and also suits where they know that they want to grow. And they've communicated that to me. Because again, I'm big on like growing them, and honestly, I've gotten feedback from them that they appreciate that the most is that I give them opportunities to grow and stretch, not feel like they're doing the same thing every single day. And so the contractors, I have a digital marketing strategist. So we pull her in to do marketing audits for our current clients. She does my social media management for me as well. We have had a couple of VAs that we will plug into different client workspaces to help either support them in the meantime until we have somebody hired within their own team, or they just contract through us for like that full operational model. We have OBMs, we have people certified in different systems again that we support. So it's a little bit of a mixed group, but they're all contractors today. I do have a vision of this being like a national brand one day and being able to have employees and leadership offsites, all of those things, but
I love
in
it.
due time.
I love it. No, I love that you have this great vision. Like, you even knew you wanted an agency before you had an agency, which is very rare, I feel like. So I love this vision. I love it. And I love that you're so clear on it. You're like, no, we'll have this one day.
Yeah.
So are you who is managing this whole team? Is it you, or do you have someone else that's managing the team day to day?
I do have a director of operations, and she helps me with all of the internal projects, like our onboarding process, and checking in with the team and making sure like she's all about like team empowerment and onboarding and hiring. Um, but more of the day to day, like checking in on the project work and how is it going? What kinds of communications do we need to send out regularly to the clients? That's me still interfacing with the team.
Got
Now,
it.
that's a responsibility that eventually I know I will transition off the plate. But now, because again, we've had so much change and so many new things happening this year, I'm still involved in that process.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, you've had a lot of change, branding and
Yes.
all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think some people want to give away all the work so quickly, but sometimes you have to be in the work to see how it's working so that
Yeah.
you can build that business, right? Like you want to
Yes.
see how everything works and how the different people work. And um, I think you kind of need to be in the trenches to know what's going on and what's best for your
Yes.
business before you can say like, all right, I'm out. Like you guys can run this now. I think some
Yes.
people want to skip that part. Like, oh, I just want to start this and let
Yes.
everyone else run it. I'm going to the beach. Like, I think it's important to know what's going on.
Well, in the spring too, when I hired two of my team members, I hired them primarily to act as OBMs and be like that ongoing point of contact for clients. But honestly, I said, you know what? We're going to take this slow. It's going to be a lot more work for me in the short term, but I know it's going to set them up for more success. And then in turn, me down the road. So I know we're tripping over our words sometimes this morning. And so we were two in the box for a good 2 to 3 months with clients. And then it was okay, great. We're going to have this next quarterly strategy meeting with the client. And from there, I'm going to back out and you let me know if you need to pull me back in, if it was too much too soon. But over those 3 months, it was a gradual watch me and how I lead and how I interact with the client, how I ask questions and honestly push back in some cases. And then the next month it was hey, I'd like you to go ahead and like do that. I will be there as your support. And then in the third month, it's like, okay, do you want me to be part of those weekly meetings with you? If not, do you want me to at least review like the follow-up notes? Like, how do you want me to be there to support you? And then from there, you've got this. I'm here if you need me.
Yeah. And I love that kind of, you're teaching them how to lead as well.
Yes.
I find that not as much of my own hires, but sometimes people will come whenever we're hiring either for a client or for ourselves. And they say, well, I want to be the leader. I want to be an OBM. I want to be the leader. They have no experience leading. What they really want is a higher rate, but they haven't had that kind of
Yes.
experience yet. And I think that some people will come into my agency and be like, I want to be here. And I think that coming here, you're going to help me learn things like that. So I
Right.
love that you're teaching your team as well. Like they're going to come out of your team someday. Somebody will leave someday and they will be a better business person. They will be a better leader. And that I think is an excellent thing for you as a leader of the business,
Yes.
you
And
know,
that's
to have that.
something, yes. And that's something like I learned that's that's experience that I gained in corporate. You know how you always talk about like what worked well and what didn't work well. This is one of
Mhm.
those things that I saw that didn't work well for people is I'm not going to hire for strong talent or skills because I don't want to hire someone smarter than me. I don't want to mentor and coach them because then they'll just take all of that information and turn around and leave. And in my
Mhm.
opinion, I was like, no, I'm going to share anything and everything that I've ever experienced or that you want to learn because if anything, it's building more, this sounds silly, but it's building more like loyalty into the brand of what we're
Yes,
building for this
I
business.
totally agree. Yeah. I mean, if they're
Yes.
happy and you're taking care of them and they really
Yes.
like working here and you're giving them opportunities to learn and grow, they're not going to want to leave,
Right.
right? They're happy.
Right. They're happy. They're happy. And why not continue that? And again, my long term vision is at some point, I would love to get to a point where I'm converting these team members that have been doing so well and growing along with me into employees and have them be the leaders that we can build out teams, do what we need to do as like the next evolution of this agency. But I'm investing in them. So hopefully they see that benefit. Yeah.
And you're also learning as an agency owner, if these people do leave, the next iteration of these people, when you
Yes.
are ready for those, you know how to do these things. You know how to train them. You
Yes.
know how to bring them up into leadership. So, I mean, you're learning as they are learning on this kind of
Yes.
grand experiment, right?
Yes.
That
And
is
I
that
I
is
tell them, I'm like,
entrepreneurship.
we're figuring this out together as we go. I'm not going to have all the answers, but I can tell you I always communicate my vision. Like, here's where I imagine that we'll be in 6 months, in a year, and what's possible, but I can't do it myself. So this is where I need you. Yeah, this is just where I need you. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like all of this business thing, everyone puts in their marketing that they know what they're doing and that they'll tell you everything is great, right? And then behind the scenes, everyone's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I am making this up. It's just an experiment.
And we're so good at helping our clients do it. But
Yeah.
if you peel back the layers, and I tell my team, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you access into a different part of the system now that we use internally. It's not, it's nowhere as pretty as what we put together for our clients.
Yep.
So
it's a cobbler's shoes, right? Like the kid, whatever the interview is, I can never get out. Yeah. Like right now, if you looked at my office, you'd be like, seriously, you're the systems and like all about like organization. Like my life is a disaster right now, apart from this screen that you see here. Yeah, because we're experimenting and we're always putting our clients, all that kind of stuff forward, making sure our clients are taken care of. And I am a people pleaser to a point. But I end up like, oh no, I'll take care of all that. And then I push myself off. My other thing, if you look at my teamwork right now, there are late tasks and they're all my own tasks because all the client stuff is on time, right? Like that's just how I feel like we end up sometimes.
Yes.
Because of that. Anyway.
Well, and that's why I really enjoy working with my director of operations, because all of those things that I'm overdue on, like she's keeping tabs of that. She's like, Mary, this is 3 weeks overdue. Yes, it's an internal project, but is this something I can take off your plate and just get it done?
Yes.
Like, thank you. Yes.
Right. That's where I am excellent at giving client work away at this point. That was where I've come to after 6.5 years. My own stuff is so much harder because we don't have, for our clients, we build out these beautiful like spreadsheets and hubs and dashboards and everything. And we have that here, but it's all mine. And that is the hardest part of giving things away for me, is giving my own stuff away, which I can, and that I think is realizing that makes me understand our clients so much more, because then they're like, I'm not giving it away. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I can't give it away either, but we're going to do this together. So letting them know that, yeah, we understand that it's hard, but we've got to keep going or we can't grow. Yeah. Okay. So to the nitty gritty of it, like how many people do you have on your team?
7.
Nice. Is that including you?
That does include me. So there are 7 of us.
So you're counting in your head.
Yeah, no.
So how do you pay them? Is it, you don't have to give me real numbers if you don't want to. Like, is it hourly? Is it percentage? Are your clients on retainers, so they're getting percentage or hourly, that kind of thing?
Yes.
How does that work?
So I learned early on that for retainer clients specifically, not project clients, but retainer clients, I didn't like time tracking. And so this is something that we experimented with by changing it to, here's the monthly rate. And that does vary based on how complex their business model, their team is. And then for my team members, I've contracted with them, depending on their experience as well. Like they get paid per client per month. And so we have a flat rate.
A flat rate.
Yes. Some of them are tracking their time so we can keep track of it and be like, this client really is pulling a lot more of our capacity than we thought. Right. We don't start tracking it until we're getting a sense that it's a problem.
Okay.
Then with project clients, it is hourly. We are tracking our time hourly. I pay my team members an hourly rate for project work because it's based on deliverables. And so if we happen to get a project out faster, we're monitoring that process. But yes, retainer clients is a monthly per client support rate. And then project clients is an hourly rate based on what we've projected the level of effort and amount of time that project needs.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always find it easier to do flat rate to flat rate for client and sub, because if you have I think this is where a lot of people get into trouble with our agencies when they end up making no money, is that the client, they charge, a flat, whatever, $1,000. And then they have the VA, let's say, on an hourly retainer, and then they just eat through that whole thing. And that whole $1,000 comes in one hand and goes right back out. And like, they never actually make any money from any of the clients. So yeah, I think that's the flat rate to flat rate just makes, because you know what you're working with, you have a cap, you're not going over that. If you are, there's a discussion about it. It makes much more sense to me.
Correct. Now, where that varies a little bit is if that client all of a sudden comes to us and says, we're working with you on OBM work, but we need a VA or a tech VA or a social media manager. Now, those are roles that we have a talent pool that we've already screened and we have ready and available. And VAs, I would do just like I would do for my own team, is they do run an hourly timesheet. So those are conversations we have with the client and with the team member on what's the maximum, what's the threshold for, hey, when you hit 10 or 20 hours for the month, let us know so we can gauge what we need to do for the remainder of the month. Like, do we need to add on more hours and talk to the client about doing so? Or do we need to go ahead and just scale back the expectations of what we can deliver this month?
Yeah, and like having like a clear, this is what we're going to deliver, right? A clear
Yes,
scope for this thing. And then if that scope changes, like if you just had an OBM working and you need to add a VA, that's a different
that's a
service.
different scope. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a change. And I think some people just kind of wrap it all in like, oh, we'll just add them in. And I'm like, well, then how are you going to pay all these people?
Or they expect the OBM to just do it. Or can't you just do it all?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We've
Right.
had
Because
those conversations too.
yeah, I've seen a lot of job postings and I'm looking through and I'm like, okay, this is a VA, a tech VA, an OBM. There's probably a DOO in there. There's strategy work. Like you cannot, no one is doing data entry and strategy work and like, installing software. Like all of those things are different people. Like it's not just one
Yes.
person, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so one thing, going back to our earlier part of the conversation about offers, one thing that we've changed is when we have especially solo entrepreneurs come to us and say, we want to hire an OBM, they don't have a
A
team
team.
in place today. That to
Mhm.
me, like that's potential like sign
Well, yeah,
and
like who's
flag.
doing any of the work? Because
I know. We've been there.
yes, because the OBM is a manager. It's an online business manager. So who are they managing if there's no team? And I think that that's a lot of times people just coming in, they have their own business, right? They came from corporate and they're coming in. They're like, okay, this is what somebody told me I need. I need an OBM.
Yes. Or they've
Mhm.
had a VA before and they're like, well, I was expecting the VA to have more input into the process.
Yes.
And
Can't
that's
she
not
just
what
run
that role does.
things?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so they think, okay, well, if I just hire an OBM, they'll be a thought partner for me. They'll run things and be able to take direction and just do all the work. And we've had to have those boundary setting conversations. We've had to part ways with certain clients because we just had to be honest. Like we can do everything capability skill wise, but that's not what we're here to do. That's not the impact and the value we feel like we can bring our clients. And so that's why we added that add-on service. And we're very clear that this is an additional service if you want the administrative support. Now we can help our clients hire that within their own teams, or we say, you know what, we'll handle everything within our team, but here's the addition, here's the addendum to your current contract.
It's like an add-on to whatever you already have. So you have a retainer with the OBM, and then you can have an add-on of
Yes.
whatever, a tech VA, whatever you need. Yeah, I think
Yes.
that, yeah, there's no way to just wrap it all into one position easily. I have struggled with this over the years. I have operations clients that have been with me for 1,000 years, and we have a blended rate, but it's hourly. So if they want to do some crazy work and we have the capacity, then they just end up paying more. So that was the thing. Like we didn't have as much scope, uh, a strict scope, but we had hourly, so we could adjust that kind of budget easily. But even still, that it's a lot. It's a lot to put all the things into one thing. So yeah, I don't
It
blame you
is.
for splitting it all out.
It is. And then no fault of the clients at all. They just get used to that being like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
well, Mary will just do it. She'll handle it for me.
Yeah. And of
And
course, if you're a
so
people pleaser, you do
I
it.
know
And
you
then you
do
do it the
it,
second
but
time while
then
you're under your breath, like, "Mrr, mrr, mrr, mrr." And then the third time you're like, this is ridiculous. But like, yeah,
yes.
I did the exact same thing.
But we've enabled that behavior, right? We didn't
Yep.
have that early conversation of this is what we do and this is what we don't do. And so we've had to have difficult conversations like that amidst onboarding and training my new team members, amidst like rebranding and changing our model up a bit. Like it's been an interesting few months. I wouldn't change anything. If anything, we've like gone through all of these experiences in a very short amount of time because we're meant to learn something from it. We're meant to be doing something
Right.
differently. Yes.
Yeah, because well, in the beginning, you don't know you're a people pleaser. You're just really excited someone's paying
Oh,
you
I
and you're not
know.
in an office. So I
I
didn't
know.
know. I would thought I was mean. I was on Wall Street. I thought I was mean. And then everyone's like, oh, maybe you should stop doing all this work. Like I thought I was really good with my boundaries because I only answered emails from 9 to 4. And I thought, all right, I'm a rock star at this. And then I would just say yes to everything else. Like between those hours, I was like, yes, I'll do all of these things. Like, so you get swept in and you say yes, and then you have to kind of come back. And I think it's easier if you have, if you have turnover client wise, like if you're doing projects, and then the next one you
Yes.
can say this is how it's going to be. But having those conversations, have you found with retainer clients, like how are they taking those conversations when you're like, okay, we need to put the brakes on this? How do you handle it? Do you have those retainer clients that you've had to have those conversations with because you want to continue working with them um, and not
Yes.
deal with this?
Yes. There's still the right conversation. Still the right conversations to have. They are hard and difficult conversations, but they're still the right ones in order for us to move forward. And so I honestly, it took me weeks to mentally prepare myself. I had my talking points. I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to approach it. Like I have a background in leadership and training development and corporate HR, but it was very different when it's me representing my business, my team. I'm very protective of my
Yeah.
team. Um, and so it took me a while to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. Today's the day. I'm talking to this one client today. Um, Most of the conversations went really well. And
That's great.
then, yes, there were a couple where it didn't. Either it felt good in the moment, but then it just went back into old ways after that. And we ended up just having to part ways. And so that it's business. And if you don't set the
Yeah.
boundaries for yourself, you're just going to end up, like you said, the next time it happens, you're going to like grunt and grind your teeth. Or it may get to a point where you start resenting that relationship and that engagement and you start like avoiding. I see the email, but I'm going to pretend like I don't and just like respond to it tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. If you see
And
that
that's
email
not
in
good.
your inbox and you get real angry and you haven't even
Oh,
opened it yet, like they could be wishing you like, I hope you're having a great day. And you're like, I hate that person. Like as soon as you see that name and you're like, okay. I found that it was very hard for me to put those boundaries on myself when I was like, no, you're not going to do this work anymore. But it was much easier to do it when I was taking care of my team. Like you were saying, like you
yes.
protect your team. Like as soon as someone was mean to Gwen, oh, this ends now. Like they could have been mean or pushy with me for months, and I would have been like, okay, well, this is what's
Yes.
growing a business is like. But as soon as they were mean to Gwen, forget it.
Yes, and I am trying to take every decision in my business when I know it's going to have to be a difficult conversation and picture it's either one of my team members or even like I was having this conversation with my husband last night. I'm very protective of my husband and my son. And so if anybody does anything and I don't agree with it, like that mom comes out in me. And so, yes, these conversations, you can do it in a way that doesn't feel ugly and gross and icky. Like there's a great way to approach difficult conversations in business without it feeling like you're attacking another person, without it feeling like it's
Yeah.
about a person. It's just about the relationship and the work. And so I'm very mindful of those interactions when we're having them.
Yeah. And I think that's also part of this great experiment, this learning is that like every time you deal with someone and you're like, okay, we're not going to do that again. And then the next
Yes.
time you have that kind of built in to start, because sometimes we don't know in the beginning what we need to do. And then as we progress, we're like, oh, yeah, should have said that in the beginning. And then the next time and then you say it the next
Yes.
time, or you make that boundary. And it's learning. And the uncomfortable conversations are totally necessary. It's how we're going to figure it out. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you don't like those uncomfortable conversations, then maybe an agency isn't the right model for you right now. Because you're going to have those either with your team members, with your clients at
Yeah.
some point. No.
Yeah. I mean, it's true, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're going to be managing people and put any 10 people in a room, someone's going to say something to the other one or whatever it is. When you bring people
Yes.
together, there is going to be uncomfortable conversations or things you have to manage. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things when people come to me and they're asking if they should start an agency. And I often ask if they just want to make more money, if there's something else they could do instead.
Yes.
But like, do you just want to do VIP days? Like, do you want to work less and make more money? Like maybe it's just VIP days instead.
Yeah.
And do you want to manage people? Because if you want to, if those are my two questions usually to think about, do you really want an agency or do you just want to make more money and work less?
Right.
Because there, you're going to have to talk to people. Like you're going to have a team. You're going to want to talk to them once in a while, and you're going to want to like to do that because you're going to do it forever. If everything
Yes.
goes well, right?
And it's not just about communicating like work, being able to delegate or
Yeah.
like assign tasks. It's the follow-up. What kind of conversations are you having with people when they don't get that task done, when it's overdue, when they are avoiding having that conversation with you about why it's overdue? I don't know if you hear my dog shaking in the background, but yeah, it's working with people, leading people. It's more than just like managing tasks.
Yes. Right. Like it's not just like creating a task list and teamwork and making sure people get it done. Like it's more than that. It's the people skills that you need to have that leadership for that are so important because that's, I think, the leadership and that culture, developing that in your agency is how you end up getting so many other better things, like having a really great team that doesn't want to leave, that they want to stay. So like that is so important. And I think some people don't want to do that part. And I'm like, but that's like the whole thing of it is
That's
making
the
this team
glue.
right. It keeps everyone together. That's how you keep expenses down. That's how you keep turnover down. Like all those things you want to do. It comes back to that leadership and managing that team, not just the tasks, but the people skills, the everyday working together.
Yes.
What do you do when someone ghosts you and you're like, I haven't heard from you in 4 days. Like all of those little things. How are you going to handle those things? That's the leadership there that I think is important and people are terrified of, but it's totally learnable if you want to learn.
Yes, and it's one of those things, like, I don't think you hear about natural born leaders, but I honestly don't think it doesn't come natural for most people. It's
Yeah.
something you're going to have to practice, and unfortunately, I used to say this in HR, like, you're gonna have to pick up some bruises along the way, either a bruised ego or, like, physically bruising yourself because you're just like hitting your knee against the table. You're like, why is this still happening? Like, there's going to be some experiences where you just unfortunately have to go through and experience it a number of times before you realize what your natural leadership inclination is.
Yeah. And those people that are like, oh, I've been through it all. I can get through anything. That's because they went through it all. They have all those experiences. They can get on. I was saying to Brian, my husband, the other day, we are in the 90s. Well, I don't know where we are when we're recording this podcast, but I'm in the mid 90s or right around there for a podcast. The first 30, I wanted to throw up every single time I got on. Like, I didn't like doing this. And I thought it was a great idea, but I didn't like it. And as soon as I did, I don't know, 30 of them or so, I started to be like, okay, now I'm okay. But I had to go through the wanting to throw up all the time to get to the part where I didn't want to throw up all the time. You need that experience to move forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Now
No, I mean, 5 years, not even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So when my husband and I first met, like it was in a work environment. And we used to laugh because I would have to get up and lead the company meetings. And I would get up there and it looked like I was physically going to like fall over or like get sick
yeah.
on myself in front of a room full of hundreds of people. And to go from there to now doing what I do every day. And honestly, one of my goals for next year is like I want to be up on stages. Like I want to get back in rooms with people and be up on a stage and be able to speak to people about different things, like either motivation wise, business, whatever. Who am I? Like I think
Right.
Mary from before would have been like, are you kidding me? But it's exciting to see that growth and evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's like, we did a whole thing last fall with, well, I did, like 4 months of being uncomfortable. It was like the end of the year. And I was like, I want to get things done. I'm going to on purpose be uncomfortable all the time. And once I was uncomfortable, I was not avoiding being uncomfortable. So the decisions were a lot easier to make. It was much more like, this is a better decision monetarily. This is a better decision for my family, instead of that's a scary decision. I don't want to do it. And I did a whole bunch of things, including one of them was getting on a paddleboard. I am scared to swim. I can swim a little, but I grew up on a horse. I don't know how to swim well. And I live at the beach, which is ridiculous. And I'd wanted to paddleboard forever. And getting on that paddleboard was massively uncomfortable. I thought I was going to cry. Luckily, my friend Sean took care of me. And now I think I got off that day and I think I went home and bought a paddleboard. Like I was like, I'm in, I'm so excited. But sometimes you have to get past that crazy, wanting to throw up, scary, I'm going to shake my way through this to get to the other side where you're like, oh, this is awesome. Right? Like I was all afternoon yesterday, I was on a paddleboard and I can barely move my arms right now. I'm still talking with my hands, of course, but yeah, like that kind of, oh, I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to be on stage. I'm never going to start a podcast. Those things are in your head because most of the time we're just scared and it's uncomfortable and we don't want to be uncomfortable. And once you get over that, then you're like, oh, well, this is so much easier. And now you're on stages and talking when you couldn't even stand up in a meeting before. So I'm always amazed at what you can get over if you just were a little uncomfortable once in a while.
Yes. And there's a quote that I heard recently. It's courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is seeing the fear and being able to do the thing anyways, right? It's like, in order for us to learn and grow, unfortunately, you're going to have to do something that's new or different. Maybe you're doing the same process that you've always done or the same routine, but you're going to switch it up a little bit. Or maybe now it's at a different scale. And so that's the only way we learn and grow. You don't learn by doing the same thing every single day.
And what is Denise Duffield Thomas? She's the chillpreneur.
Yes.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I got her book right here.
I think mine's behind there. She always says like new level, new devil, different devil. But I can never get an idiom right.
New level, new devil. Yeah.
There we go. So like you think you've got it all and then you hit this next thing. You're like, oh, I don't have to do this again. It's just constant learning. Yeah. Yes. I love her. She's, I think of her little Australian voice in my head sometimes when I'm like, this is too much. She's like, chill out, just do it. Like,
yes, she's one of the people. I have the book, but I had the audiobook first. Listen to her, and then I was like, okay, I need the book now. But yes, I hear her voice in my head. Yes,
she's like chilling me out.
Yeah. Like,
so
you've got this.
We're talking about a lot of that leadership here. So how do you look for team members? How do you choose them? How do you onboard them? Like, how do you do all that?
Well, honestly, I don't do a lot of pursuing people to be team members, right? I don't want to have to convince someone why this is the right model for them and what they're doing in their business. And understanding that being part of a team, being part of an agency isn't for everybody. Like not everybody leaves like a 9 to 5 because they want to go work for somebody else, even if it's as a contractor. That's okay. So everyone that is on my team has approached me because I've been very vocal and saying like, oh, this is part of the plan, or this is a current role that we're hiring for. And they've come in through that way. Now I would say one person on my team in particular, that wasn't the case. She actually messaged me and celebrated the fact that I was announcing, hey, I hired an operations assistant and this is what we're doing. We're going from me to like a team and this is happening, people. And she messaged me on Instagram and I was like, oh, this is really great. And I was like, you know what? Because we were connected before when I was a coach, I was like, I've been paying attention to what you're doing. Do you want to just have a coffee chat? Like get on Zoom and I just want to check in. How are things going for you and what you're doing in your business? And after that, I was like, hey, I'm going to send you a contract. You're doing this with me. I need you on the team. So that was the only case where it didn't start off as a conversation of, let me review your application. And why do you think you'd be a good fit? It was more of I've been paying attention to what you're doing. And I think we can do some amazing work together.
That's amazing. Yeah. Like, and you see how people are and you can, because it's hard when you are taking applications and you meet a person. I don't like to give 7 interviews because seriously, shoot me. Like no one has that kind of I know that there's companies out there that do like all these, but like I'm not that kind of level. Yeah. This is not a $1 million position usually, not here. So when you first meet someone and they're really good in an interview, they are not always as good on in real life. Sometimes they really interview well and sometimes they interview terribly and it's not indicative. So I think if you have people in your orbit that you know, and you're like, oh no, I know what she's like in real life. Like she's a real person. She's nice. She looks out for people, whatever the thing is. I think that's so handy.
Yes. Yes, it is. And that's because when I was a coach, I was networking like crazy when I was coaching in my business as a side hustle. Like, and honestly, I wasn't that successful as a coach. I would say I was successful as far as like the relationships I was building, but I wasn't signing high ticket clients as a coach and doing this. But I still, I mean, I did it for years and I enjoyed it because I was getting to meet people, understanding their stories, understanding more about myself and who I was as a leader, as a mom, as a wife. Um, and those relationships now are what I consider the foundation of what I've been able to do successfully as this agency owner. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do
Yeah.
you look for when you're hiring? Are you looking for a strict skill because you're trying to fit the ClickUp tech role? Is it more fit culturally, or what do you look for?
Definitely culture fit. And that's something you can't get in an application or a resume or anything. Yes, to some degree, I'm looking for experience, but I'm looking for not those keyword experiences because I have my own like perspective and we could talk for an hour on recruiting in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Um, I'm looking for someone who has shown a history of trying new things and kind of putting themselves out there. It's hard. It's hard for me to be able to translate that to like a team, one of my team members, and say, as you're screening applications, look for these qualities because it's not. Yeah, it's more of an art form than a science. But when I was doing career development in my corporate career, like I'm looking for somebody who's shown initiative and aptitude to want to grow. Like if I could
Yeah.
figure out what that secret sauce is and bottle it up, like I can build a process for it, but we can't. I mean, that's just
It's a
something
lot
you
of
have to,
feel.
it is.
It's a lot of gut. Yeah. Thank you. Because I am not traditional HR. I don't have rubrics and lots of like crazy stuff. I don't, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of very
Yeah.
strict HR. They have very corporate ways to do it. And my brain doesn't work that way. And I feel very much that it's much more about gut on my side. Like, yes, I want them to, know things or whatever, but
Yes.
it's so much more about, do I think you're going to fit in here? Do I think that you're going to want to work hard? Do you have ambition? Maybe not so much ambition that you are going to leave in 4 minutes, but ambition that you want to
Yes.
grow here.
Yes.
Maybe you don't like
Yeah.
to market and you don't really want to do a lot of like, you don't, you want to grow your business, but being on an agency is pretty sweet when you're not having to work on so much marketing, work's coming to
Right.
you. That's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
wanting to grow is like, that's the gut, I think.
It is. And so to your question about what our onboarding process really looks like, we have an application. Some of it is, yeah, tell us about your experience, but more it's more questions about, hey, take a look at our social media profile and make a recommendation. Like what's one thing that you think we can do better and why? Right? I want to see that they're thinking about business in the sense that's relevant to the role that they're applying for, right? Um, then from the application, they get an invitation to do it's my interview. I don't know if you've heard of myinterview.com,
Mm-mm.
but they can do video interviews where I myself or one of my team members will actually be on a video and say, hey, here's the question. We're big on team culture. So,
Hmm.
what's your perspective? What's the most important quality of a team member? And then it's a recorded video, and then they get a couple of minutes to record themselves. They can re-record if they don't like how that went. But it's basically a back and forth interview, but in a recorded
I
process.
have never heard of this. This is fascinating.
That way you're not on Zoom for 50 hours in a month because you're trying to fill a position. You have this library of recorded interviews that you can screen. And then from there, we may do a case study depending on what type of role we're hiring for, or just jump right into like a panel interview with me and a team member.
I love it. That's very interesting. Um, yeah, myinterview.com, you said, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, I think that's well, and I love the fact they can re-record it. Like they get real nervous, or like they can plan a little bit, but like because video is hard for a lot of people. I will
it
say,
is.
like right now, you and I we're recording this, but we're live conversation, totally fine. Me standing in front of 500 people telling them what I know, fine. Me recording a video for 40 seconds or whatever it is took me 2 hours last week. I couldn't get it out. I was all nervous. It's so hard, even for me, after all these millions of hours, I feel like, of recording. So I think that I'm always interested to see how people like video recording, but that is more of like a question and answer. So it's not
Yes.
me standing in front of a camera trying to say something interesting. That's much interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Like that's cool.
Yes. It's a great process. And it's one that we've started using for our clients too, because our clients don't want, like, if they're going to be hiring a tech VA, they don't want to have to do 10 interviews. We want to be able to screen them, for us to be able to personally flag, like, here are the 2 candidates that we think you should take a look at. And they take a look at it and say, great, I'm going to meet with Kelly.
Yeah. That's very cool. I'm going to totally check this out. All right. So I know we're running late in this hour. So what advice would you have for someone who is thinking of starting an agency? Now that you have kind of gone through this past year of starting an agency, what would you tell them as they're starting this?
Be clear on what your vision is, right? You don't have to have like a long-term vision like me, where I'm like, okay, I can see into the future where like we're sitting on a beach in Australia and I have my team running in the show for me. No,
I
like,
love it.
but be clear on like what you want in the short term, and then be honest with yourself about the amount of work that you're still going to have to be involved in as you go. Like, just because you have people on your team doesn't mean you're fully stepped out of that client work. I mean, you can, but be very thoughtful on the process for how you're building team culture, how you're onboarding and training them, the kind of support that you want to offer your clients. And it's always going to end up being a little bit more work than you thought it would be, but it's for all of the right reasons, if this is truly what you want to do. Yeah.
I love that. I preach intention, being intentional, making intentional decisions all the time. So I love that. What do you think is the hardest part of running an agency?
I feel like the mother, and it's not the hardest part. I enjoy it. It's just, like I said, I'm very protective of my team. And so I think it's wanting to make sure that they're all taken care of. Like, we had one client leave us recently, and I was like, oh, what am I gonna do for her, that team member? And like, I gotta, like, yes. And so it's now me feeling like I went from being a mother to one to like a mother to 10.
I totally understand that. Like, I
Yes.
have grown women working with me, but still, like, I'm very protective of them. I want to make sure they're okay. Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Okay, last question. What are the things, like, what's the thing you love most about running your agency?
I love that I get to do everything that I did in my corporate career, but now for myself and for my team. I love that we have the flexibility to make the decisions, call the shots, and also the ability to say, well, that didn't quite work out the way that we wanted to. Let's pivot and try something new together. So I like not being in business by myself anymore. Like, it was good. It was good. Don't get me wrong, but um all of the things to grow this agency and this team have been so worth it, because now do feel like I have a team who's got my back. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not so lonely.
It's not so lonely. It's nice to be able to like be on Slack and someone's like sending a picture of what they're doing today and be like, oh, we're actually a team. Like, this feels good.
Or just venting a little when your kid drives you crazy and they're like, oh, mine's been driving me crazy too. And you're like, okay, I'm not alone in the world.
How many cups of coffee have you all had today? All of those things.
Slack is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yes.
Mary, thank you so much for being here with me today. Where can everyone find you?
You can go to Zargarian, Zargarian, Zargarian.org. We're also on Instagram, LinkedIn as Team Zargarian.
All right. And I will put all that in the show notes so that everyone can find Mary. Thank you so much, Mary. This was a great conversation about leadership.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
And I will see all of you next week. Thank you so much for joining me this week. If you have an agency or want to create one, come join my Facebook community, Get Your Agency Together, where we talk all the things growing and scaling your agency. For show notes and more info on all the things, head over to reynoldsobm.com.